Hello and welcome to all our listeners. This is Welcome to Livingston podcast. My name is Don Putkela.
And I'm Angela Putkela, and we're with the Putkela Group Real Estate Professionals.
And we'd like to just welcome you all here today. We have a great episode today. Today we are welcoming in Jen Ling. She is with ReJenerate Your Space. So welcome today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you so much for coming. I guess what we wanted to get started with today is if you just wanted to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your business.
Sure. Yes. My name is Jen Ling. I am owner and rockstar organizer at ReJenerate Your Space. We help people simplify their lives. I mean, really, it's decluttering, organizing their space, and just kind of making it better for them. That's kind of in a nutshell.
Awesome. And right now, I mean, I think people are going to start thinking spring cleaning as the weather starts to improve. And certainly, I think there's a lot of great insight we can kind of glean from today and a lot of the resources that you have from your company that people can reach out to.
Absolutely. We love to help.
Yeah, and I know that in the past 2 years here with the pandemic and everything, a lot of people have been looking at their space a lot differently. I mean, I think that whole aspect of you were stuck in your house for a number of weeks, you start looking at those spaces a lot differently.
Yep, for sure.
So how did you get started then?
Well, I had a full-time regular job, and when COVID hit, I was laid off. And so I kind of had to figure out what my next step was going to be. And, our boss kind of said, I don't know what's going to happen, so have a backup plan. And so I really put some thought into it and came up with a backup plan. So here I am.
Yeah, well, and you're better with the quotes than I am, but I think there's a quote that, in terms of innovation, that sometimes it's necessity is the mother of invention. That's what it is.
Yes. So ReJenerate Your Space. I understand it's decluttering, it's going in and organizing the space. So it's a better use of the space. Am I getting that a little bit right?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So what kind of services then do you offer to people?
Yeah. So we do organizing, decluttering, purging, helping people get rid of the items that they no longer need or want. We do also help people that are moving. So decluttering a space before a move, packing up if they would like, and unpacking and setting up a space after a move too. So I work with a lot of people that they don't have a lot of time to do those things. And so to have someone come in and take a bunch of boxes and turn it into a beautiful space that is organized and looks nice and functional. In addition, we help with what I call setting up new rooms. So if someone is pregnant and needs a nursery set up or a basement bar or a home office, which has been a big one with COVID, anything like that, we can come in and just make it happen.
Wow.
Awesome. Seems like a great resource and something that a lot of listeners may not even know is available. Frequently some of whether it's our sellers or buyers, as we go through and talk to them about listing their home, in some cases, they don't even know where to begin. If they've lived in the home a long time, they need to declutter, they need to get ready. That's definitely something that...
Yeah, for sure. Especially when you have been in a space for a long time, you tend to accumulate a lot of stuff. It's just what happens, so you just having someone that can come in and help you take the time to go through.
You have to do it by yourself,
Yeah.
And even for those that aren't selling, but that they just want to hit that reset button, the refresh,
Yes.
Can you speak to us about just sort of that mental health aspect and what an organized space can do for somebody?
Sure. Well, I mean, when you're living in a space that is cluttered or very unorganized, it's stressful. It makes you very anxious. It can make it difficult to sleep and even put strain on relationships. I mean, it can just really cause a lot of issues, not to mention having a hard time finding your stuff.
Right. The amount of time that if you're looking for something,
For sure. Trying to get ready for work and you can't find that belt or those earrings or the dress or whatever it is.
Car keys.
Or the car keys. Yeah. The more important thing, it's just not finding your stuff. And so, and also purchasing more things, you don't realize what you have because you can't find it.
That's true. How often have we, or even people we know, you go out and you buy something else because you forgot that you already bought it or have it or can't find it.
Exactly. And I was just thinking about it in terms of someone that's thinking about something like this, a lot of times you have absolutely no idea where to start. You have a room and you've been living in it forever, or your kitchen, say, and this is the place that I've always put that, but then I've put stuff in front of that, and then there's another layer in front of that.
Yeah.
So, they don't even know how to begin it.
Yes.
And I've seen so many people that they get started with a project, and a week later, they're so much worse than where they were when they started.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And it's, like you said, layers for sure of stuff. And I think a lot of times you need a different perspective, to maybe that place you've always put the thing isn't really the best place for it, but it's hard to see that when you've always kind of done the same thing. And so, when you can have someone come in and give you kind of a fresh perspective on, how should this be set up for not only to be organized and looking nice, but functional. That's my number one goal, to make things functional, So, when you do want to redo a space, it's a good idea to kind of pull everything out of it and see what's there, see what needs to stay, and really think about, okay, is this where it should go, or is it maybe better somewhere else?
Right. So how does that, I saw on your website that you do consultations. Mm-hmm. So how does that work then? How do you kind of get that idea of how does the space best lay out for the person? Because everybody's different.
Yeah, for sure. So it's definitely a process. I do free consultations. So I come in, I'd like to do an on-site consult versus over the phone or something, but to get a feel for the space and what's going on in there. And so we'll do a consult. I'll talk about their goals, some of the issues they're having with the area, and then we'll set a time to start. And so when we do, we'll kind of go through and start sorting things and grouping things together. During that time, they'll kind of figure out what is staying, what is going. Once I know what's staying in the space, that's kind of the best time for me to figure out how should this kind of be laid out. So whether it's, furniture or storage pieces, once we kind of figure out, okay, all of these things are staying, I can kind of recommend, well, maybe some shelving here would be good for this, or, maybe we should put some bins here, or this kind of unit here, whatever the case is. Every project is different, every client's different, and every budget's different too. So, but really, I think to get a good picture of how to lay it out, it kind of starts with coming through and sorting and figuring out what needs to live here, and then from there kind of figure out what it should be.
Got you. So when you're talking about shelving and bins and such, I did watch that video that you have on your website. So anyone out there that goes to her website, she has a great before and after where you can kind of see the impact on the spaces. But the question I had is, when you get to that point where you say shelving is needed or bins are needed, mm-hmm. do you go out and do that shopping, or do you give them a list?
Either way. I'm super flexible with how I work with clients. And so I do tell them, if you want me to just go out and purchase the items and reimburse me, that's fine. And I kind of do like that because, maybe that thing that I really want to get for this particular purpose isn't available, or they don't have enough. And so we have to change plans. And so when I can just kind of be there to figure out, okay, well, we can use this instead, or this might work here. Or, instead of a list, I might be at the store and say, oh, this would work really well instead of that thing that I had in mind, So I do like to do the shopping, but it's up to the client, and sometimes it's a mix of things. Sometimes I'll go out and get certain things. Well, maybe they order shelving or, have that taken care of themselves. Some people want to do a built-in shelving where they have to hire someone and, take care of it. But, often it's just the plastic shelving that you can get from the store that I can put together and, take care of that. So yeah, it's just whatever they want to do.
Are there any stores that you've had better luck at than others in terms of buying those types of units?
Yeah, for sure. So I do, depending on the project and the room and the space and what it is I'm looking for, I do shop a lot at Marshall's, honestly. That's a great place to find discount items.
Our office is right across the parking lot. It's right there.
Yeah. And then, Target, they do have great bin selection. They're usually in stock. And then of course you can actually get them in bulk too, some certain things from Target too. So, so I do like Target as well. And then, for shelving, sometimes Harbor Freight or Home Depot, or sometimes Amazon for any of the above. It's just, depends on what I'm looking for, and I can kind of figure out, but those are some of my staples. A lot of people love Container Store, which is great, but it's a little pricier. And unless you're looking for something really specific, I don't usually shop there. So
to each their own, right?
Yes. It's a great store and I love it, but
yep. And I assume a lot of it is just part of that consultation of what level of stuff are people looking for? You know, do they have a theme for the room? I'm assuming that sometimes people are like, I want to do this theme.
Not so much necessarily. Once in a while, I
Okay.
have one client in mind who she does get really kind of into what colors bins we're going to use and the labels and stuff that we use and stuff. She really gets into that. But most people are kind of just like, oh, whatever you think, you know. So then I get really excited about it and I get into it and say, oh, what about these? You know, these are cool, or you know.
And
Right.
since you've helped so many people, you have so many ideas of what has worked for other people. So it seems like you'd be a great resource for making just the best suggestions.
I think so.
And I did, you mentioned labels. So do you do a lot with labels then?
Yes, I don't really consider a space completed until it's labeled. And the biggest reason why I think is because, you know, you can organize it and get it all perfect. However, you got to keep it that way, right? And so the first step is setting it up in a way so that it's going to work for you and the people using it. But then you have to get it labeled so people remember and know where to put it back. And that's kind of the first step in keeping it organized. You know, it's pretty normal for people to need maintenance, you know, as we call it. So maybe 6 months, 12 months, quarterly, whatever the case is, people might need someone to come back in and just kind of touch up the organization. But when you can have good systems in place with labels, that's a really good start. And so I think it's super important that gets done.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Fantastic. Do people hire you for their children in terms of getting their kids all set up?
Absolutely. Yes. Playrooms. I love playrooms. I did, or kids' bedrooms or whatever the space is.
Yeah.
But I did probably one of my favorite projects that I did was a really cool playroom for some kids that were various ages, but the younger ones weren't old enough to read yet. And so I put together some really cool labels with the word and the picture on it. And so that went on the bin and then also on the shelf where the bin goes so that, you know, ideally the kids even are trying to learn how to put everything right back where it goes.
That is awesome.
It's a little Montessori like that way.
I was going to mention the same thing because I watched that video and I saw that with the bins and the labels under the bins and the picture of the toy that goes there.
Yes.
So it is such a good skill to learn at an early age that, you know, you have parents, if they hire you and they're doing their kids' playrooms and such. I mean, that's such a great skill as the kid gets older that they're learning about organization and such. So
Yes.
Setting them on the right path, which is really half of the battle.
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
So I noticed you used Pinterest Perfect quite a few times. And I'm just going to say, with being a guy, I get an idea of what Pinterest Perfect is. You know, I've seen some of the boards and such.
Yeah.
But when you're working with people, how much of that idea is like there's organized and then there's organized, I guess. Yeah, Pinterest Perfect, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it's just a matter of, you know, I think a pantry is a good example, you know, getting all of the matching baskets and all of the matching containers for the flour and the sugar and the perfect, cute little labels that you love. And so it's kind of taking that organization to the next level and just making it super, super pretty and just perfect to look at and something that you would take a picture of and tell everybody about it.
Yeah. And I've got to believe that there's that calming aspect because it's very visual and there isn't any confusion about where something might be.
Right.
Right. And to go back to that whole wellness or the mindset, when you do somebody's room and you talk to them later, what kind of benefits are you seeing then in that person that has that, you know, highly organized now?
Well, they love being in the space. I mean, I think is the biggest thing. You know, maybe before it was a room they were only in when they needed to be, but now, you know, it's set up in a way that they love being there. And once it's organized, people love to stare at it, you know. So, but really just finding peace and being calm in that space again, which I think is huge. And again, finding stuff and spending less money on things that you already have and, you know, all of those things. But
A lot of added benefits there.
yeah, for sure.
Yep.
Outstanding.
So then where would you say you have found people need the absolutely most help?
Oh, that's kind of a hard one because really it's really everywhere, you know, but I think probably basements and garages are probably two of the spaces I do the most of, you know, because I think there's a lot of storage in those areas and it's easy for them to get out of hand, you know, especially with a basement where maybe you're not spending as much time in and then, you kind of just keep putting stuff there, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh my goodness, this is completely out of hand. I need help. But closets, it's really throughout the house. I've done a little bit of everything, and
Right. It's interesting that you mentioned garages, because I wouldn't have thought of that in terms of what you do and such, but that is a really good point. Being in real estate, I've seen some intense garages that need a lot of help. My garage needs a lot of help, so I understand where it's at. So that's really good to know, because that's one of those spaces that I think I waste the most time in, where I'm like, I need this tool, and I've just tossed the tool.
But it's not just us, because in a lot of cases with our sellers, we do let them know, all right, in terms of the kitchen, you need that really decluttered, really wide open, so that way people can see the space, picture themselves in it. If you're going to give anywhere, you're going to give on the garage. So just go ahead and tuck things into the garage. People kind of poke their head out and say, okay, it's a garage, and then kind of keep going.
Right.
But how amazing would that be on a listing if the garage was just all thoroughly organized too?
Well, and if you have a garage that is Pinterest perfect, I mean, just picture, what are they called? The boards with the holes.
I know the ones you're talking about.
Think of the name all of a sudden. Anyway, the pegboards.
Yes.
Anyway, with the tools all laid out nice and perfect, and then great, storage pieces like shelving and tool chest, and all of that, and everything is just beautiful, and then you've got matching shelving all around with matching bins, and I mean, think about how great it could look,
Right.
So even with the same stuff that's already in it, you could take that and just really, really wow with it for, especially someone that's trying to sell their home. That could be a really good. You can always move those shelving pieces with you, but to show it off, you can have it all nice and neat. So,
but we do a lot of talking about living your best life, and I think being organized is definitely something that would make a very big impact on that for anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it just makes everywhere in your home or office or whatever more enjoyable when you can look around and truly enjoy your space and like what's there, and know that you don't have a bunch of stuff that you don't need, and you simplify and you just enjoy what you've got.
Right.
One of the things I was struck by in our conversations together is that you did make a point to let us know that you keep your client's information very confidential. So anything that you find, anything you see, that's not something that comes up to anybody, outside of that. And I think that's very admirable and something that it's good for people to know and be aware of.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's, even when I don't necessarily think a space is bad, people can be embarrassed of the state of their space, because to them it is bad, and maybe they don't want people to know. So I do always ask if I can take a before and after picture. When I do, I make sure there's nothing in that photo that, gives away who it is. And if there's photos, I block out the photos. If there's, if it's a business and there's logos, I block that out. I make sure that anything that could give a space away, as to who it is not shown. And so I'm very careful with that with my before and afters. But in addition, I don't talk about who I'm working with, even if it's a friend and I'm talking to another friend, I'm not going to ever mention that I'm working with someone unless they put it out there and they say, oh, Jen's helping me with this, or they put it on Facebook and they're all excited, whatever the case, I'm not going to put it out there unless if someone tells me I can.
Yeah, that's very nice to be sensitive to that.
Right.
And as realtors, we do encounter that too, in terms of keeping people's information confidential.
Exactly. One of the things I was going to mention, because I was thinking when you guys were talking about that, is the whole idea of, people think a lot about their house being clean, but they don't think a lot about their house being organized. So when people have parties or they bring people over, there's that whole aspect of let's stuff and hide. So, like
Sure.
Everything gets shoved into a closet and then that door gets closed and no one needs to see it. But the stress that causes to think of having someone like you come in and the house people see for parties is just as organized as the house people see when they're not around. And just that ease of that. I think it's a great resource that a lot of people, A, they either don't think about, or B, they don't think about the impact that can really have, the time and resources that we push towards that maybe we don't have to.
Yeah. I mean, truly taking care of a space and, truly making it what it should be is it's freeing. You know what I mean? It's just, I guess I don't really know what I'm saying, but
It's all good. But maybe even in terms of, in the guise of, spring cleaning, somebody that is wanting to at least sort of even get started on their own. I mean, what suggestions would you have for them to begin to get organized?
yeah, I think really it's, picking a starting point, which I usually tell clients when they're trying to figure out where do we want to start on a project. I usually ask, what is their biggest pain point? Which space gives them the most, aggravation. And so I would say to someone to pick that point, pick that space, and kind of just get your head in the game. Be prepared to pull everything out and start going through stuff, and be prepared to get rid of things. Have some boxes on hand, some trash bags and stuff for donate items, and just kind of get ready to jump in. And then from there, like I said, kind of pull it all out and group like things together and kind of figure out what's staying, what's going, and kind of assess where, is this where it should go? Okay, what's the best storage piece I can use here?
Okay. So it's more of a pull everything out and rebuild is the best way to start then.
Yeah, because I think when you don't pull everything out, you kind of get used to, okay, well, this has always been here. This is fine. It works, But when you can pull it all out, truly see what's there, truly think about if you need it or want it, and then from there, really look at, okay, how often do I use this? Maybe this should be up top a little more, or, is this something that's really heavy? So we need it to be down where I can get to it easier, whatever the case is. But I think just really evaluating, okay, where should this go? But, one of the things we were talking about is, you were asking what is a good tool that I use. And I always say a measuring tape. I mean, that I use that more than anything, because the worst thing is to go out and buy a bunch of bins and a bunch of, organizing pieces, and then get them home, and whatever shelf or whatever space you're putting them in, it doesn't fit, or it doesn't fit right. And then you're wasting space, or whatever the case. So I always say, don't go out and buy a bunch of organizing pieces, I should say, until you know what is going to be organized in there. And then you can figure out, okay, well, these bins would fit really nicely right next to each other right here. Or, well, I don't really need a bin that big for that. So maybe I should get some smaller ones for these things, and then put them away properly. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Especially with the measuring tape. They come in handy more than I could even imagine.
Yes.
That and my label maker, of course. My label makers.
I like the idea of labeling the pieces, So I take it you don't believe in a junk drawer then.
That's not necessarily the case.
Okay.
I think a junk drawer is perfectly fine in some situations. I think some people it works, and that's okay.
Right.
When you can organize your junk drawer a little bit somehow, that's great. They make plenty of wonderful drawer organizers. So, that would be helpful. But no, I think honestly, some people kind of need a junk drawer, and I think that's okay.
Something that's a catch-all.
There you go.
Yeah. I personally don't have one, but, if that works for someone, then I get it.
Good.
The trick is to not have 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 junk drawers, right?
Exactly.
Not a junk drawer in every room. Is that what we're saying?
Right. Yes, exactly. Just one spot for those miscellaneous items.
Yes.
But
Well, that's really good.
Great. Now, what is the pricing for doing something like this? So for somebody, you've given some great suggestions. I'm sure some people out there will just kind of, branch off and try on their own. But for those that are ready for a professional to help them with this, what kind of price does that look like, and what packages?
Sure. So my hourly is $65 an hour. I do have discount packages. So I've got several different packages. The discount is greater for the number of hours you purchase. And so basically when I come in and do a consult, I can kind of give an idea of how long I might think it'll take. And then I can recommend some packages. A lot of my clients usually have more than one space they want to do. So usually some of the larger packages work well for them, but I'm super flexible with how I work with people. So, maybe someone does have a lot that they need done, but it's not really in their budget to do that, so they might buy a small package every other month or something. And, we just kind of chip away at it as we can. So it just depends. Like I said, I'm really flexible with people. I like to kind of cater and work with them how how the needs are. So, I'm kind of getting off topic here, but sometimes people hire me because either they don't have time or they don't have the eye for organizing or they just really don't want to deal with it. And so I tell people I can either come in and do this mostly on my own, or we can work together the whole process, or kind of a combination of both is what works well. And so I can have them work with me for a little bits here and there, and most of it I can do on my own. But
nice to have that flexibility to be able to do either way on it.
yeah. And for some people, they really just need that person there to encourage them to get rid of things, to take the time to go through stuff, kind of that moral support.
Right.
Right. And I assume having that outside eye makes a really big difference, where someone else, they have that personal connection to the item that they haven't touched in 5 years.
Yes.
You don't have that.
Yes. And that is huge. I think, and some people even, try to have their friends come in and help them, which is fine. But I think when you can have a truly outside perspective, someone to kind of say, do you really need that? When was the last time you used it? Do you think you're going to use it in the next little while? Is it more of a keepsake that, you can take a picture of and,
That's true. I think keepsakes are kind of the bane of my existence. I feel like each kid, I have this huge bin, and this was like the, under kindergarten stuff. And so I have all these mementos all boxed away. Any thoughts and suggestions specifically
It's
about
bins,
that?
not bin, by the way.
Yes, bins.
I mean, I certainly get it. I think really just, maybe checking that out once in a while and saying, do I really need all this stuff? And if you do, you do. I'm not someone that's ever going to make people get rid of stuff. I'm not going to yell at you to get rid of things like some of the shows, the people on the shows do. But I think keepsakes are something everybody has, and most of them you'll probably hang on to, but maybe just evaluating those once in a while and saying, okay, do I still need all this stuff? And if you do,
fair. Pull it out, put it back in, and always use a bin, because I think in real estate, some of the things we found is in terms of when basements flood or if something gets crushed under something else, then, if it renders it destroyed anyway, then it doesn't make sense. But if it is important, you should treat it like it's important.
Yeah, for sure. And with that, I will say, typically when you are trying to organize a space, everything should be contained somehow. So some sort of container for most things is typically a good idea. It helps keep things neat and orderly.
Yep.
Right.
I know we've had clients where we're helping them move, and it's the third time they've moved, and there's the set of boxes in the basement that have not been opened since they were in the house 5, 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So I think those are important areas to, maybe look at those spaces as well, because you're wasting valuable space in your house for something that
Storage
you
units.
don't even know what's in it anymore.
Oh,
People frequently will pay for storage units, and then they have their boxes there and they never come back. So I think part of it is just pulling things out and looking.
Yeah. Well, like you said, they had those same 5 boxes that they've moved from house to house to house, and they don't know what's in them because they never used it and they clearly don't remember. So yeah, taking some time. And honestly, I think a lot of times it doesn't take quite as long as you think it's gonna to just pull it out, check it out. Honestly, if you haven't looked at it in 10 years, it's probably nothing that you really need anyway, So, and if it was, you probably rebought it already. So
That's very true. Hey, I was going to go back to real quick, because you were talking about the price and everything else. How does someone that's hiring you to declutter and get ready to list a house differ from someone that's hiring you to come in and organize a room? Because I'm assuming that it's kind of for a different purpose a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I think really, when you're decluttering to list a home, I haven't really done a ton of that, but I think just finding out, taking a look at the space, figuring out, okay, I like to find out from a realtor, what should we be doing here? Right. And, just making sure it's happening the right way. I mean,
that way things aren't getting just shuffled off to the side. That way it can be organized. So whether it's getting thrown out or donated, make sure that happens.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really see that there's a huge difference, because I think really it's taking the space and decluttering it and making it look as nice as possible.
Got you.
And so really it may just be pulling out some things that maybe you would normally keep in your home, but if you don't really need it, for the next couple months and you
May as well
really
get
need,
packing. Yeah.
yeah, you might as well pack it up. So maybe packing up some extra things that you wouldn't have before.
Right. Yeah. Because it's interesting with the Pinterest Perfect. We talk about to our clients all the time of you're living in a magazine for the next couple months. And, you know, we want you to maximize the space. We want you to remove the stuff that you're not using anymore. We want to be able to make the room look as big as it can and as good as it can, because sometimes what you're using the room for wasn't the intended purpose of the room in the first place. So we're having those conversations with our sellers all the time. And then we're also having those conversations with buyers, because there's nothing worse than coming into a house and they didn't do all those things that you are recommending people do.
Right.
You know, so it's a good point.
Yeah, well, that makes a difference. So as our listeners are interested in you and your services, how can they find out more, contact you? What's the best place? for all that?
Sure. So you can call or text me. I'm Jen again. 810-522-8422 is the number. It's 810-522-8422. Or you can check out my website, which is ReJenerate with a J, not a G, ReGenerateYourSpace.com. I'm also on Facebook, Instagram. You can reach out via Messenger. However you'd like. You can text. I know that works for some people. I think I said that. Anyway.
Great. And we'll make sure to have those things in the show notes as well. So for those listening, they can see that there, but at least if they're driving the car and hear it and want to come back to it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes. And did you want to ask your question? You always ask at the end of every episode.
Oh, I do.
Yes.
Livingston County, we just love, and everybody ends up giving kind of a different answer for the most part. What do you like best about Livingston?
Oh gosh, honestly, I've been here most of my life, and I think it's really the people, the community mindedness that we have here, and the people and the small businesses, and
They really lift one another up.
yeah,
Really
I mean,
kind of
it's
remarkable.
I feel like there's just something special with that here, and aside from that, I'd probably say like the parks and trails and lakes and all that. But I think the people is really the biggest thing for me.
Awesome.
Wonderful.
Very good. And we just love hearing about that because we just love Livingston County so much. And we will have been here 20 years ourselves in about a week or two here.
Yeah.
So it's just, but there's
Seen a
so
lot
many
of
great
changes in
things.
20 years.
Yes,
Yes.
for sure.
But it's a great place. And that's why we love having this podcast. Welcome to Livingston. And it's really nice to highlight all the great things about our community.
Absolutely.
And to all those people listening out there, I would say that ReJenerate Your Space is just a wonderful resource to be able to go out there, check that out. Think about those rooms in your house that, you're afraid to clean, that you're,
That anxiety you get, right?
Oh my gosh, the anxiety. When you look at the shelves in the room and you're like, yeah, I just don't want to tackle that.
And that's okay. You don't have to. There's a professional here.
That's right.
Yes.
And honestly, I've got resources to get rid of just about anything too. So I can help with that.
Well, that's a big, really very quick, but that's a big aspect. A lot of times you have stuff in your house, in your garage, that it's there because you don't know how to get rid of it anymore.
Yes. Paint is a huge one.
Right.
But I mean, there's all kinds of things that I've found in people's homes that are, kind of off the wall and they don't know what to do with it. And yes, I've got a resource for that. I'm
Wonderful.
Sure.
Awesome. Great. Well, we appreciate you joining us today. I think we've learned a lot and we appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. This was fun.
Well, thank you so much.
And welcome to Livingston.